Hello everyone, back at it again with another compile card compilation. This is still going to be main 1 and aux 1, just kind of reevaluating past opinions because I've been playing around a bit and some cards are way better than I thought. And some are honestly way worse. But, we'll get into that as we do. Over here on the right, I have the compile card database. It's a community resource. A lot of people put it together. Really generous with them, and it is pretty freaking cool. Cause drop down here, you get to see all the cards, all their text, what they do, all that. And I was using it last video to, just give me a better idea of some of the cards. It's an easy enough thing to flip through, so it's nice like that. But I didn't put it on screen, which I said I was going to. I apologize dearly for that. Sue me. So I'll probably be going in order of all the protocols organized on this, and we're just gonna deal with this janky split screen nonsense. Okay, moving on, starting with Apathy Zero. So Apathy Zero is a good card, but not necessarily the best card. I find it's generally a bit undervalued with how you would play it. To me, it feels like a card where if you get it out early, your opponent's going to flip it, and if you get it out late, there was a better card you could have played. Like generally, it's in that unfortunate limbo where you're never really going to get it to be super useful just by nature of how your opponent would look at it. So I think it sadly gives like maybe a B tier, like middle of B tier. It honestly, it's a good zero, but it can't be used as a good zero. That's kind of the problem. It does work very well in conjunction with Apathy 1, which is by far the best card in all of Apathy, because this allows you to flip high value covered cards. So, say your opponent has like a 5 covered by a 1 or whatever. You flip the 5, you flip the 1. Um, Now, those are both face down cards, values of 2. So, you've gone from a value of 6 in that line to a value of 4. And then, in combination with something like water or death, you can then delete those face down cards, which is very nice. Um, I personally find its utility very good, but I can understand why it's not, the absolute craziest thing in the world because it still does leave those cards for you to deal with. Maybe in combination with something like Plague 4 it could work, but of course your opponent can then just flip those cards again, depending on how they want to play it. I think it still deserves an A tier placement, but I could see some room for debate there. Now, Apathy 2. This is maybe the worst card in the game because it just kind of just works for your opponent. The top text here: ignore all middle commands of cards in this line. The problem with that is immediately after you play this card, your opponent is going to play a 5 card. They're not going to have to discard anything. It's solely going to be a good value play for them, and you can't even make use of that same idea because when you cover this card, you first flip the card. I don't understand it really. I think the only idea is it's supposed to block like really good effects that your opponent could play, but generally this card's just going to get flipped, or a card of yours shifted onto it and then flipped, and or just like deleted outright. It's it's honestly a great trash card. Like if you have to discard a card, discard one of these. Something like this where it's just never going to be useful. Honestly, like in theory you could use it, but you're just never going to. I think it's frankly straight D tier. Apathy 3, flip when your opponent's face up cards. It's good, it's like basic flip card. As a 3, that's kind of nice. I don't think you need to give it much higher than C tier, but I always appreciate it. Now, Apathy 4, I think is actually quite good. I think it deserves maybe a B tier placement because of kind of the value you get out of it. This can be really useful if you're in like a really competitive like battle between two lines and you don't really want to give up on either of them. Effectively allows you to get 6 total value in one play, but you kind of get to strategize where that value goes. Do you put it all in one line? Do you flip in other lines? Do you like there's just a few things to be considered here. And because it says may, you don't even have to. That generally is, kind of a nice thing to have, control over whether you want something to happen or not. Overall, like, it's B tier. What can I say? Apathy 5. There's nothing particularly special about any of the fives, but to me, I sometimes think they work a bit better in context with some protocols rather than others. I think for apathy, since you could theoretically play it face down, that does lend it a slight bit of use. Plus the fact that, I believe, okay, no, it's just one of your opponents face up, and then, I mean, there's some utility to it, especially if you pair it with a zero. It's not insane though. I think it could still just go. I'm going to be putting most of the fives in C tier because admittedly they're better than D tier, but I, it's a basic five. Like, you get what you get, okay? Now, moving on to Darkness. Darkness is quite a good protocol, and how better to encapsulate that than with Darkness 0, draw 3 cards, shift from your opponent's covered cards. This is an S tier card. That is incredible draw, and the ability to shift your opponent's cards means effectively you're going to be scouting for a 5 or some other card that's like less advantageous to your opponent. It also is just great for when you're in sticky situations, your opponent's close to compiling, or maybe they are going to, and you can just ruin their day and frankly their entire game plan by shifting a card out. Darkness, primarily affects covered cards. So like with the 0 and with the 2, not a whole lot of other protocols can do that, so I think that's why Darkness is especially good. Darkness 1, flip one of your opponent's cards, you may shift that card. This card is alright. I'm going to go B tier on it. It's nothing crazy, but the flip and shift is sometimes nice. However, that's not the craziest thing in the world, so I think I will leave it at, You could make a case for A tier, but I feel like I'm going to be putting a lot of stuff pretty high up, so let's just see how it pans out. Now, Darkness 2. All face down cards in the stack have value of 4, and then you may flip one covered card in this line. Frankly, I don't even think the all face down cards value of 4 is as impressive as people say it is, but flipping one covered card in this line is genuinely the most incredible ability you could ever have. No other card in this game has that, to where you can flip a face down card up when it's covered, and that gets you to a whole bunch of shenanigans like revealing top effects of like Spirit 3 or Psychic 1, stuff like that, where you just ruin their day right after. I think solely because of the middle effect, honestly, you have to put this in S tier. And that's the ridiculous part, is that like this card would still be good without that, but with both of these together, it's just crazy. Darkness 3, play one face down card in another line. I quite like this card actually. I was playing a game recently where, I didn't have control, but it was like fairly close, and I needed it to be able to win. So I needed to compile in Darkness. I played this card in Darkness, and then I was able to gain control in another line. And my opponent had to compile in 2 separate lines. They were then forced to take one, and then I had control and I won. Recognizing that utility of being able to put down value in multiple lines is actually pretty advantageous. So I think I would frankly be tempted to put this in A tier, but I know that'd be saying too much for the card, so it's going B tier. Now, Darkness 4, shift one face down card. This card can be useful. As a 4, and a shift card for a 4 is pretty good. I think it's going to net out B tier because on the whole, that's not too crazy. And sometimes this card can work against you a little bit, which is not quite, the most ideal. Darkness 5, there's nothing really special about any of these. So Darkness 5 going to join Apathy 5 in C tier. Moving on to Death. Now Death is interesting. Death 0 I think is a phenomenal card. I'm going to put it high A tier. It's not game breaking, but it is definitely a very, very good card. Death 1, same thing. I'm going very high A tier. Actually, no. Okay, Death 1 I'm going S tier because this is effectively 2 turns in 1. Obviously you draw a card and you delete another card, but honestly, deleting the Death 1 card in itself makes it so incredible because this allows you to re-trigger a lot of things, including Death 0. So this can turn into just a massive deleting frenzy, or some other draw, re-trigger, shift, flip, like whatever you want, whatever you have this covering. and then you get to play your turn. That's the insane part. It's basically a two turns in one kind of thing. I think of it almost as like if there's a lull in the action and you can't really figure out what to do, play this card. It's a very good card to throw out when nothing's really happening because you then can use it to great effect so much later. I'm a huge fan of this card. Just letting you all know. That's why I think, because of all what's been said, I think it deserves an S tier. Death 2, delete all cards in one line with values of 1 or 2. Very, very good. High A tier, but maybe not quite S. This can definitely, like, destroy your opponent. Say they're playing Gravity, they put down a line of, like, 5 face-down cards. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm screwed. But then you whip this out and you're actually fine. I think definitely it pairs well with a high flip deck. It pairs well with, your opponent doing some nonsense. It's just so incredibly useful, and I quite like that. And you can use it for re-triggers because it deletes itself. Like, it's great. It's great. Death 3, delete one face down card. This is nice. It's like B tier. It is not really all that special, but I mean, you're gaining value. Your opponent's possibly losing value. You could also re-trigger deleting one of your own cards. It's not the worst thing ever. Death 4, delete a card with a value of 0 or 1. People are sleeping on this card, man. This card's A tier. For a 4 card to be deleting values of 0 or 1, that is insane. Do you know how many times this has saved me from like a Fire 0 or like Plague 0, or your opponent has Spirit 1 or like Spirit 0? Like, I don't think we realize how incredible of an ability that is, and just how insanely useful it is. You're always going to have an opportunity to delete one of your opponent's cards, if you just hold on to this and then wait until they play a 0 or a 1. Because your opponent's eventually going to be playing those. Like, you wouldn't, if it was like a 3 or a 4, maybe they're not going to play something like that. But a 0 or a 1 absolutely is getting thrown out. That's why I think this is just so great, because it's almost guaranteed to have its effect happen, and it just has, a value of 4, which is in itself quite good. Now, Death 5, nothing really special. Death doesn't contribute anything unique to the 5 dynamic, so we will be moving on. I want to see if this does better for me by doing this. Okay, it does. Fire 0, instant S tier. Need I say more? Flip one other card, draw 2, and then when this card will be covered, first draw 1 card, then flip one other card. So effectively, you draw 3, you get to flip twice, and like, the amount of re-trigger ability you have with this is just insane. Like, it's so functional in every aspect. It really is a perfect example of how Fire the protocol in general works, with just, mass functionality across any and all thing you could want. Fire 1, discard 1 card if you do delete 1 card. I like this card. It sometimes annoys me because I wish it was higher value. I understand why it's not, but especially because you have to discard to delete, it can sometimes feel less worth it than you would want. I think it still deserves, honestly, I think I'm going to go B tier, frankly. Like, with the small amount of value you're getting, and the fact that generally, like, for some things you could just be flipping them or shifting them away instead of straight up deleting. Like, I feel like you could really use that card you're discarding instead of deleting something. Fire 2, on the other hand, I have come to enjoy a bit more. I find, occasionally you want to return like a fire card, and then that's really annoying because it's, you can't because it's under Fire 2. But overall, this is generally better than you would think. I will reorganize these later, by the way, but just letting you know, Fire 2 in that reorganizing is going to edge out Fire 1 by a not inconsiderable margin. Fire 3, this card is insane. It's going like top of A tier. This end ability is generally so much better than I could have ever thought. It carries certain protocol combinations to an obscene degree. Like, this card is ridiculous. It single-handedly, in my opinion, makes Fire the best flip, like, protocol in the game. And that's already on top of all the other stuff Fire can do. Not even counting, like, Fire 0. So, it's really just insane card. The fact that it's a value of 3 is, like, nuts. I don't know. I feel like, honestly, you could swap Fire 1 and Fire 3, and that those values would make a lot more sense. This card is just ridiculous. Fire 4, discard 1 or more, draw that amount +1. I like this card. I find if I'm playing like a high cycle deck, I don't really need this, and I'll end up discarding it more often. But it honestly never hurts. Like I've had times where I'm like, hey, all of these cards are terrible. I have Fire 4, let's just use that. And that's honestly not too bad. I think it's a solid B tier. Good for what it is, value-wise and effect-wise. No real complaints there. Fire 5, discard 1 card. I find this might be my first one where the 5 goes a bit higher. Because Fire is so discard heavy, sometimes you just need something to get rid of. And I find the Fire 5 isn't the worst thing ever to eliminate if you're already kind of high value in the Fire line anyways. It's maybe still going to stay in C tier, but we'll crown it the king of the 5s for now and get back to that later. Moving on to Gravity. Gravity is a very interesting one. I think it has a lot of stuff that is good, but a few slight drawbacks. Gravity 0 is maybe the most situational 0 in the game, and that's not to say it's like never going to activate, but just, you really need to be specific about when you play it. Gravity 0, very good for late game and mid game. At the start, it is not going to do anything for you, but as long as you're managing your deck size well enough, it's actually crazy. I feel like I'm rambling. Let me just cut to the chase here. This card can give you, if played right, 8, 10, 12 points of value. That's ridiculous. No other card comes close to that. In addition, unless you have very specific cards like Water 3 or Death 2, or no, it might be Death 3, whatever. You're not getting rid of this card. And you're not getting rid of the face down cards under it. And that's ridiculous. It's kind of, your opponent just has to kind of hold that. And that's, it's very, very good. Let's just put it that way. I don't think I'm putting it in S tier, but it's going to go, fairly high A tier. Mostly just because of all the constraints on it, making it a bit worse than it could otherwise be. It's not game breaking, but it is certainly never fun to see. Now, Gravity 1, draw 2, shift 1 card, 2 are from this line. Gravity definitely uses this draw. I think it kind of needs it, so that is helpful. It's a decent card. The shift 2 or from this line means re-triggers are possible, which I do like. I think shifting away from this line also re-trigger. Like, honestly, it's pretty nice. I do think I'll go bottom of A tier on it. Obviously, if it was like a value of 2 or 3, that would be ridiculous. And it would solidify its A tier placement. But tentatively, I'm going to keep it there, just see how it pans out. Gravity 2, flip 1 card, shift that to this line. This is the only flip card in Gravity. I thought there were more. I see now I've just been using Gravity 2 a lot. And I think, frankly, even if I don't have that high of an opinion of the card, if I've gotten a lot of use case out of it, that lends to some level of importance about it. Do I think it's A tier? No. Do I think it's high B tier? Yes. I think it just allows you a bit more flexibility within whatever, collection of protocols you're playing, and that is always a good thing. I think, frankly, you could beat someone else if your deck is more flexible, even if theirs is more heavy hitting or, more traditionally considered a broken deck. Moving on to Gravity 4, shift 1 face down card of this line. Sort of suffers from the same thing as Darkness 4, if I'm correct. And, it's alright. I think, where did I put Darkness 4? I'm pretty sure this is just going to match up exactly with it. However, I will say, I think, I find a few times with Gravity, I end up using this more. I don't particularly know why. Maybe it's just the protocols each pairs with a bit better. But Gravity kind of gets the job done there. Now, Gravity 5, you would discard 1 card. Gravity 5 is interesting. I think this is one of the first cards here where the 5 actually does have a distinct use case beyond other stuff because this Gravity 6 exists, alright? And because of that, playing a 6 and a 5 together, kind of guarantees that your opponent is going to have a tough time dealing with that. That's just a very, very quick way to compile. Also being said, um, if you have a bunch of face down cards because of the gravity 0, you need to have played. One of those ending up as the gravity 5 being played face down is more advantageous than losing out more effect focused cards on it, because obviously 5s are more value geared. Do I think it's great? No. Do I think it deserves to be on the top of the 5s? Probably. Gravity 6. Gravity 6 is one of the better 6 cards in my opinion. It honestly might be the best because, one, it just gets you to really, really quick compiles. Value of 4, your opponent's not remotely expecting you to compile, but if you play this down, really kind of a jump scare for them. In addition, your opponent playing the top card of their deck face down on another card of theirs is actually sometimes beneficial for you and detrimental to them. It'll sometimes cover certain effects. Like, say you have, I don't know, speed 3 or whatever, and you want that end effect of like shifting. If your opponent covers that with a face down card from this gravity 6, you can't use it anymore. So in some cases, this is actually more of a useful card strategically and value wise, which I think, if you do both sides of the game well, that really says something. So frankly, 6 cards aren't going to go super high. Gravity 6 is probably going to edge out somewhere around high B tier, and that's doing a whole lot for Gravity. What else do we have? Hate is definitely a very interesting protocol. I generally never want to play it, but then I do, and I kind of enjoy it. Hate 0, it's a basic card, delete 1 card. I prefer just the simplicity of this. It's not doing anything crazy, it's just delete 1 card, and your opponent has to take that. Solid enough, let's go mid B tier. It's not like game breaking, but it is definitely nice, especially with the re-triggers. Hate 1, discard 3, delete 1, delete 1. Obviously, the idea here is you're not actually discarding 3. You are getting down to a very small hand size of maybe 2 or 1, and then playing this card. I do think delete 1, and then you have to deal with whatever effect your opponent has, and then delete 1 is kind of annoying. Truthfully, to me, it's kind of like a slightly worse Death 0. But I still see the advantage of this sometimes, especially when paired with Hate 3, which after you delete cards, draw 1 card. That is pretty nice. You're drawing 2 off of this. The only problem is sometimes this can get interrupted by whatever effect you expose that your opponent has, and that's kind of annoying, but it's still pretty good. It kind of hurts when you play it out on the board for your opponent, so it'll go B tier. Hate 2. Delete your highest value uncovered card. Delete your opponent's highest value uncovered. Hate 2 is a bit annoying. It's good for re-triggers because it can delete itself if that's your highest value uncovered card. I've never really gotten it to work super well, though. Like, it feels like even if you're deleting something like a 6 or a 5 that your opponent has, you're still deleting something that you kind of want. Generally, you're not playing something on the board just for it to, like, not be that useful to you. So I feel like this card finds an awkward place where it doesn't really know what to do. I think theoretically, this should draw you 2 cards, though, if I'm correct, which is kind of nice. So that might bump up my assessment a little. Not enough to give it more than like a very low B tier, but Hate 3. If this card could ever get on the board, I would love it. But I feel like your opponent automatically sees, hey, they have Hate 3. That's bad. Let's stop that. Now, if you pair that with, like, Speed 3, like, that might be kind of nice. You just instantly cover it. Otherwise, you really just have to pray and hope that your opponent doesn't have a flip card. And a lot of times, the people I'm playing are smart enough to hold a flip card. If this card does get out and is, permanently on the board, it's great. Hate, basically every card in Hate besides the 5 is deleting something, sometimes multiple times. So you're really drawing. Theoretically, the draw would be good, but that's theoretically. And while I do appreciate this card in a lot of aspects, it's a huge like red flag for your opponent. It's like it's like the aim here of compile, and that's just not ideal. So it definitely deserves to be around Hate 1. probably a little above, but just keep in mind it's kind of a pipe dream to actually have it, function for a lot of the game. Your opponent's generally gonna clue into it and try and stop it. Hate 4. Now this is an example of a 4 with an actually kind of disastrous effect. It's not like one of those will be nice to you 4 cards. It kind of sucks. Um, if it can just like delete like a 0 or a 1, that's usually not that bad. Um, Sometimes it deletes something important though, like a 2, and that really does suck because if it's your 2, that's terrible. If it's your opponent's 2, that's that's not that bad. But you see how it works. I generally just discard this. I'm gonna be fully honest. I don't like it too much. The artwork on it is actually very nice, but frankly, this is C tier because even with the value of it, it has the potential to get rid of cards you want, or really just like do nothing, which is, that's fine, I guess, but I still don't like the potential for that effect ever. And then hate 5, you discard 1 card. Kind of operating on the same thing as fire, where for the hate 1 you'll have to discard 3, and this is really a fine option to discard. I will say it probably helps out hate a bit more because this 4 is kind of weird, so always worth considering. But that's about it for hate. So moving on to life. Alright, life 0. I used to think this card was incredible. I've kind of walked that back a little bit, and frankly, at this point in the game, I think water is actually better than life. I know, crazy opinions here. This definitely is nice. It gets you 3 cards out on the board, and then in combination with life 1, you flip 1, flip 1. You can kind of just get both of those up immediately. However, the fact that you have to delete this card after, which is kind of valid for balancing purposes, and you have to have a card in each line, means that you can't play this from the outset, and really, I feel like it's kind of like Gravity Zero, where it would be crazy, but it really gets kind of stymied by other things to a degree where it's not nearly as powerful as I once thought. Would I put it in A tier? Probably. It's still, no matter what, you're still getting a decent amount of value out, but especially because you need your deck to have 3 cards. You need cards in each other line, or in each line. Like, it deletes itself after. Like, so many things that just make it really annoying. Um, and frankly, I kind of end up preferring water at this point, anyways. Life 1, flip 1, flip 1. This card is great. Frankly, this you could argue is an S tier card. It's not quite up there with fire, obviously, but flip 1 is generally very, very good. That allows, theoretically, you either retrigger 2 of your cards that are face down, you like retrigger 1 other card by flipping it, then flipping it again, same card, or you just screw with your opponent by flipping like some of their high value cards. This is another card where flexibility is the name of the game. That's why I think it's a very, very good card. And it definitely, I would say this is a card that helps with flip in a lot of other areas. Like some decks are really low, and so long as you have this card, it can sort of ease the burden of that. So it's an underrated S tier, but it's an S tier. Life 2, draw 1, you may flip 1 face down card. This helps out with the flip issue as well a little bit. Honestly, as a 2, it's appropriate for a 2. It's nothing too crazy, but you definitely would prefer to have it as opposed to some other garbage card. It's gonna go like a higher B tier because that draw is nice and the flip is nice, even if it is a face down card there. Life 3. This card is not great. It's ostensibly a value play. It pairs all right with the 2 and the 1, but I mean, it's gonna go to top of C tier just because like ideally a 3 would have some like middle effect that activates, and this just doesn't. So you really, like, I find I discard this a lot. I find I don't even really play it all that often. Um, I could probably strategize more around it, but I feel like that's just one of those things where to make this one work, you're sacrificing better options, and that's just, why would you ever do that? Moving on to life 4. If this card is covering a card, draw 1 card. Very good 4 card. You can see why this is useful. I think this goes kind of up there with Apathy 4. Like, the condition for this is almost non-existent. Like, once you get past like the earliest stage of the game, you'll have cards in each line, and getting a value of 4 and another card, always nice. So clean, simple, good card. Life 5. I mean, it's all right. It's frankly just another 5. It's going somewhere in here. Nothing special about how light interacts with it. So it goes C tier. Light 0. This card is great. It's ostensibly a flip card. It's also a huge draw card. The fact that you can use it for your own side and for your opponent's side makes it really good, because it's either an offensive flip against your opponent or a defensive like draw, where you can play a 5 face down and then flip that. That's really useful, right? Because then you've guaranteed 5 cards to your hand. I'm very tempted to give it S tier. Let's go very bottom for now. This card is genuinely so good in my opinion, especially when paired with the rest of Light. Now, Light 1, end draw 1 card. This is good. It's somewhere in A tier. The only reason it's not insane is because 1, obviously, if you play another card over it, it covers it, end effect stops. 2, your opponent, if they have the free time, will just end up flipping this or shifting a card on, the usual ways to stop stuff. However, if their stuff, if they're preoccupied with other stuff, say you're like a face down war in one line trying to compile and they're also trying to compile, then this card gets pretty good. You know what I mean? So it's very much like, can you get the passive side of it to work well to your favor for a long time, or will your opponent just kind of shut it down? Now, Light 2, draw 2 cards, reveal and face down. You may shift or flip that card. This is phenomenal for re-triggers. Obviously, it's a nice draw. I think, frankly, it's very, very high A tier. I would put Light 0 ahead of it, because that can flip any card, not just a face down. But very, very useful still. I love the combination of Light 2 and Light 0. Light 3, shift all face down cards in this line to another line. This card is situational, very situational. But on the rare times when you get it to happen, it low-key can be game-changing. Generally, it's just a value card, a nice discard at some points. I will put it, low B tier, but, you could make a case for it. Moving on to Light 4, your opponent reveals their hand. Another value card, nothing offensive about it. I think it'll just go kind of in the general B tier zone. Occasionally this is useful because you can plan around it, but often enough it's not too ridiculous. Like, you can get away with discarding this card and you'll be fine. Light 5. This is a 5 that probably honestly will be jumping up into B tier, because of the fact that Light is very good for cycling, so a discard is actually kind of nice to have. And in concert with the Light 0, you can draw 5 cards off of this. That's pretty darn good. Which is why, honestly, you'd be playing this card face down most of the time, and then flipping it over for whatever reason. And frankly, that's kind of nice. So, because of the extreme functionality with a lot of the other cards in Light, Light 5 is going to go very, very bottom of B tier. Alright, we got Love. Love is interesting. No 0, so you're starting off with 1. Draw top card of your opponent's deck, and then you can kind of give feeder cards to them for drawing 2 cards. I like it. I feel like it's obviously got that like gambling mechanic built in. I feel like that's a rough B tier. I mean, honestly, you could maybe make the case for A tier. I think I'll go A tier, just because this can be so disruptive to your opponent's game plan, and you could just end up giving them like feeder cards a lot of the time. Give them a card that's like absolutely terrible, so it just bloats their deck, and that's kind of nice. Love 2, your opponent draws 1 card, refresh. I don't ever love giving my opponent draw, which is kind of the problem with Love, is it's really themed around that. However, the refresh is kind of nice, and obviously this is something that would trigger like the control token if you wanted it to. You're getting a value of 2 out of it, which is also nice. I'm not tempted to put it especially high, but I will use it. I'm not gonna like not use it. Frankly, I like to use it either when your opponent is very, very low and they're probably gonna refresh anyways, or when they're very, very high cards in their hand, and they will then have to discard a card. Love 3, take one random card from your opponent's hand, give one card from your hand to your opponent. This one is nice because you have the chance to really screw with their game plan, and if you get a bad card from them, just give it right back. Decent value. I think it's going to go pretty similar to Love 2, but it's pretty fun, I'm not going to lie. Like, if you ever want to just mess with whoever you're playing, like, pick up Love. It's going to mess with them. Love 4, reveal one card, flip one card. Honestly, pretty good 4. It's basically just a flip with no downside. Very few times have I had to reveal something that was, like, genuinely important for my opponent to know. And you can get away a lot of the times with just showing the same card over and over if this gets re-triggered. Effectively, that makes it a 4 that flips, and that's kind of nice, actually. So, frankly, I'll put it above Hate, but below Gravity. Love 5, discard one card. It's alright. Sometimes I'll hand this off to my opponent. It doesn't really net much of a higher ability, though, in terms of 5, so it's going there. Love 6, your opponent draws 2 cards. This is a decent 6. Like, it's not as good as Gravity, but it's not bad. So, honestly, I'm going to go bottom of B tier for it. Because, again, like, obviously they might flip this, but if you play... Actually, that's kind of a good point, where if your opponent doesn't have a flip card or like a shift card or whatever, but then they draw a flip card or a shift card, that can kind of stink. I still really like the 6s a lot, but I can see why people would dislike this. So frankly, it might bottom out around C tier. Alright, going to Metal. I am a Metal believer, frankly. I think the combination of Speed, Spirit, and Metal is genuinely good. Like, genuinely a playable deck. But Metal is really difficult to get to work well. Metal 0 is, I think, the only flip card in Metal, and it kind of just functions as a 2 that's a flip card. It's a little better than that because your opponent has to put in more work on their end to compile. So it's a little better than just a 2 that flips, but like you could almost liken it to Spirit 2 and not be that far off, and Spirit 2 is kind of trash. So like, you know, just always worth considering. It's gonna go like maybe C tier. It's not that good. Metal 1, draw 2, your opponent cannot compile on the next turn. This card is actually phenomenal, and frankly, I'm putting it in A tier. I think people sleep hard on this card, and I found that a lot of the time, it actually is difficult for your opponent to do something, besides, say, like, refresh or just, like, play a random card in some other line. It really throws off the pace of their game, and it gives you a chance to draw something that actually then, you know, Deus Ex Machina, like, saves the day for you. In combination with Spirit, where you're able to shift after you draw cards, you can then, say, get a final 8th card in that line, and then play Metal 3, which I'll get into Metal 3, but let's just say that's actually a pretty pivotal element of Metal, and it might be the most important, even if not the absolute best card in Metal. Metal 2, your opponent cannot play face-down cards in this line. This card is alright. Like, it's really, like, if you can hear how strained my voice is, it's because, like, there's nothing objectionable about what this card is doing. It just really isn't good at the same time. It's better than something like Apathy, where it actively helps your opponent, but, like, I don't know, like, I never really see this being super useful, because a lot of the time, like, the only time people are really playing a face-down card is if they have a card that prompts that, like Death 3, or is that Dark? Whatever. Probably Darkness. Or if they're trying to compile and it's just, you know, they're out of cards for that protocol. That being said, this is why I think pairing it with Spirit is good, because if you put this in a line that actually matters for certain protocols, it can be kind of good. It just really depends. It's also a good discard card. Just if you ever need to get rid of something, this is your prime bet. So I mean that's kind of nice, I guess. Metal through. Oh, I should be placing these. It's like low C tier. It's pretty bad. Um, Metal 3. Draw one card, delete all cards in the line with 8 or more cards. I love this card a lot. I get genuinely the craziest amount of functionality out of it, and I'm actually surprised by how often I get this card to work. Like genuinely, it's crazy. Um, this is definitely something where it's about managing how your opponent has played cards as well as how you have. Because if they play like like a, let's say they have like a 5 and a 6, like bam, that's 2 cards right there. You would have to match that with 6 on your own side, and nobody's gonna do that. That's a terrible trade for you. Um, However, I think this actually works pretty well when your opponent has to play a bunch of really low value cards in one line, right? And then they've really heavily committed to that line being something they compile, and then you just say nah, screw you, and then you just get rid of all of them. That's pretty nice. That's pretty nice. The draw one card is also not the worst thing in the world. Um, Again, going into my bootleg theory there on how Spirit works really well with this. If you have 7 cards in a line, you play this card, draw one card, you can shift the Spirit 3 over, and then you have 8 and you can delete. That's a nice little bit of functionality. That's honestly why I think Metal was designed in concert with some of the really uh, manipulate heavy decks, because it really works well once you can draw stuff out of it. But it's such a pain to draw stuff. Let's draw anything useful out of Metal. However, I think Metal 3 is honestly pretty good as far as cards go for Metal. It's gonna go somewhere around like, okay, somewhere around like here for okay, yeah. Let's put it behind Darkness 1. That sounds good. And like a value of 3 is like not the worst thing ever. Honestly, it's just this card is really scary for your opponent because they never know whether they're safe or not. Um, then there's no Metal 4. Metal 5, you discard one card. I mean, like, it's a basic 5. There's nothing special about it. Let's go in there. Metal 6. When this card would be covered or flipped, first delete this card. Effectively, you are forced to play this card as the final thing in your line in like a Hail Mary attempt to compile against your opponent. Or that's what people would think. Except this card is actually phenomenal for re-triggers. Because if your opponent really wants to deal with this card, either they move a card over this card, and then delete it, which kind of sucks, or the way more likely occurrence is to flip this card, and then it deletes itself, and then whatever card was under it re-triggers. And I found a lot of the time, if you have something like Metal 1 or some other effective card under it, it actually can be really really useful. Um, I think it's a hilarious and unforeseen functionality of the 6, but frankly, I think it could go somewhere in like a lower mid B tier. And with how terrible Metal is overall, like we'll take what we can get. All right, we got Plague next, and Plague is a heavy hitter by all accounts. I wouldn't say it synergizes perfectly with any of the protocols, but it's never a bad thing to have with any of them. Plague Zero. This is the Freaky You card because your opponent cannot play cards in this line and just discard one for good measure. I I think I will get the S tier because sometimes it's a nightmare to deal with, but this is why like if you have a flip card or a shift card and it's not in the line that Plague Zero is in, it's not terrible to deal with. Um, you're definitely never gonna let this card sit though. Like your opponent's always gonna try and do something about it, and sometimes focusing their attention and card resources onto it can be good for you. So overall, pretty good. Plague 1. After your opponent discards, draw one card, and then they discard, so that means you immediately get to draw at least one. I think it's good. I think it's a solid A. It's a low A, but it's an A. And if this stays out for long enough, it really can screw with your opponent. The thing is, they're never really gonna waste like a flip or a delete on this because they know you have the 0. So that's why it actually is pretty good. This as opposed to Hate 3 is something that'll usually fly under the radar enough to stay on the board, and then you start reaping the benefits of it. So I think it is a lot more practically, existent in that effect. Now, Plague 2. This is the other Plague Freak You card, because discard one or more, your opponent discards that +1. It's kind of like Fire 4, except instead of you gaining, it's your opponent suffering. So, not bad. I think it's useful if you have just a bunch of terrible cards and you want to wipe for something else, and you kind of force your opponent to go along with that, even if they had stuff that was better. I think it's like a reasonably high B tier, although I wouldn't like overrate it too much. Plague 3, flip each other face up card. Sometimes absolutely essential, sometimes kind of mid. I'd put it somewhere in the higher end of B tier, because if your opponent has like a 5 and like a, say they have a 5 and then like Fire 0, where it's something really good effect wise. By flipping both of those, you've kind of screwed them over, and that's always fun. You obviously have to consider this affects your side as well, but I think there's generally ways to think around that for you. Um, if nothing else, just like playing a face down card and then playing this card, so stuff doesn't get flipped. Sometimes it's nice for retriggering though, honestly. So you gotta be smart with it, but it is good. Plague 4. I don't understand how this is a 4 card. This card is insane. It's so much better than like any other 4 card in the game by a ridiculous margin. Your opponent deletes one of their face down cards. You may flip this card. Um, like the may flip this card thing is, the only reason that's on there is to stop your opponent from deleting a face down card that would re-trigger something good. But obviously, you kind of have to have the foresight for that, because your opponent deletes is like the first item of text. Um, Regardless, like if you were able to anticipate that your opponent would re-trigger something useful, you would just play a card over the Plague 4, and then you have a 4 card that otherwise is like wiping your opponent's value like every single play, and like that's insane. Love Plague 4, really good in conjunction with other stuff like Psychic 1. There's an infinite you can do that's just hilarious. I digress. Plague 5, it's alright. I have no issues with it. It's just another 5. Alright, getting to near the end, we have Psychic now. Psychic 0 is a very, very solid card, but it's not insane. So for me, it goes somewhere around mid A tier. Reveal Their Hand is kind of nice, and it is giving you like a net. Think of like a net positive of 4 on cards, because you gain 2, they lose 2. When you re-trigger this over and over, it definitely gets a lot. Like, it's like if you took like a landmine versus like a nuke. You know what I mean? Like, your opponent definitely feels this even more once you spam it a bunch. So that does make it a lot better. Psychic 1, your opponent can only play cards face down. Flip this card. A lot of people like to use speed to move a card over this and make it kind of like an infinite, where your opponent can only play cards face down. It's alright. I found that you can get decent mileage out of this card, although it's also a good discard if you just see no way to use it at that point. It's nothing crazy, so it's going to go like middle of B tier, but like sometimes it's been good. I can't lie. Psychic 2, your opponent discards 2 cards, rearrange their protocols. This is honestly pretty nice, and it can definitely hurt to get hit by. I'm putting it somewhere in B tier, because it's not the most insane thing of all time, but it definitely will ruin your day a bit, especially if you're right about to compile. Psychic 3, your opponent discards 1 card, shift one of their cards. Again, making them discard. It's a value of 3, which is nice. And then the shift can sometimes lead to even more sadness on their end. Honestly, it's not bad. It's going to go kind of the same place in my heart as the Psychic 2, but, different functionality, but kind of same vibe. Psychic 4, you may return your opponent's cards if you do flip this card. It's not the most insane end effect, but it's kind of nice to have like in the bag just if you need. Especially if it's like you return a 5 and then they have to play it again and discard another card. I don't hate it, and because it's a like optional end effect, like you don't have to do it. So it's like it's all right. It's probably a little higher than like Fire 4, and that's about it. And then Psychic 5, you discard 1 card. Psychic always feels to me like hard to compile for some reason. I don't necessarily know why. Um, so this is sort of nice, but again, it's just another 5. I can't really rate it too much higher than the rest. Moving on to speed. Speed 0, play 1 card. The initial functionality of Speed 0 is always really hidden, right? You're just like, why does this card exist? But this card is so beautiful for retriggering, you don't even know. If you ever shift a card off of this card, bam, instantly another thing activates. And you want to know what card is really good for shifting stuff? That's right, Speed 3. So those two work in absolute harmony. I found my opponent will delete cards that are on top of this, and then bam, I get to play another card. It's just so useful. It's the continuation of when effects get like revealed, and then those have to activate first. It's even better than that because you like this effect activates, and then you play whatever card you want, potentially screwing with your opponent before they could really get to all the stuff they wanted to do, and then now it's your turn. So like, you really gotta watch out for this if it's your opponent, and you really love this if it's you. Speed 1, after you clear cash, draw 1 card, draw 2. Very solid card. I quite like it, especially if you're cycling stuff really fast. It's going to net high B tier. I definitely do appreciate it. Honestly, probably top of B tier. Let's go with that. Speed 2, when this card would be deleted by compiling, shift this card. I used to say this card was straight garbage. I still think it's kind of garbage, but I think it definitely can be useful. If you get this card at the start of the game, it is good. I would play it at the start of the game. Your opponent's never going to flip this card, because why would they? But if it's just kind of sitting there and wait, and then you compile, and then you get to use it, that is pretty nice. I mean, I think I've only used the effect of it like once, but either way, it's a nice card to discard. It's a nice like value of 2. So like, it's honestly not that objectionable. It still probably goes like around the very bottom of B tier, but that's not the worst ever. You can get that to work. Speed 3. Oh, Speed 3, my love. Oh, okay, there we go. Speed 3 is beautiful. Honestly, Speed 3 is S tier. I don't care what you say. This is a double shift card that, if you're, like, it's just, the retrigger ability of this is insane. That's all I'll say. Also value of 3, which is very nice. This comes in so clutch for compiling situations, you don't even know. It's like, this is ridiculous. It's technically not an offensive card, like you can't shift your opponent's cards, but if you shift stuff that then attacks your opponent, that's like, same thing, which is always very nice. This is probably the best card in all of Speed, and that's saying something because Speed has some good cards. In contention for one of the best cards in the game, frankly. We'd probably go like up here or whatever. So yeah, gotta pay attention to it, absolutely. Speed 4, it's kind of just a value card. Usually it's not. It can sometimes be annoying, like the effect, it sort of works against you, but it's really not too bad. I'd probably put it on the lower end of speed cards, so it'll go there. And then Speed 5, you discard 1 card. I will say about the Speed 4 quickly. If you're trying to compile in the speed line, it's like your opponent also is trying to, and they play a face down card, you kind of ruin their day by then shifting that out of that line, which is nice. So there's some functionality. Speed 5, it's another 5 card. What do I say there? Spirit. Now we're getting to a fun one. Spirit 0 and Spirit 1. Spirit 0 is going S tier. Spirit 1 is going even higher S tier. And I'll tell you why. Refresh, draw 1 card, and then operate at whatever hand size you want. Sometimes you can build that to like 8, 9, 10 cards. I've had someone just draw my entire deck with a combination of Love and Spirit, and then just they can keep that the whole time. That's really powerful, even if initially it doesn't seem. I mean, it still seems crazy because the refresh, draw 1, but skipping your check cash is really something special. Spirit 1, maybe one of the best cards in the game. I find in certain things it's not that useful. Certain decks, it's really crazy. So obviously what should attract your attention is when you play cards face up, they may be played without matching protocols. Do with that information what you will. It's kind of insane. Obviously, in addition, you get draw 2 cards, and then the only drawback to Spirit 1, because this is definitely an insane card, is you have to choose to either discard a card or flip this card at the start of every turn. However, if you do a very nuanced strategy called playing a card on top of it, that covers that effect, obviously. So then you kind of circumvent some of that issue there. I don't know what else to say. Spirit 1, ridiculous. If you've never played a game with it being like the most pivotal thing in your arsenal, just play another game and it'll happen. Like it comes up a lot. It's very useful. Spirit 2, it's literally just a flip card. It's okay. It's just okay. It's going C tier. Spirit 3, high A tier. It's not S tier, but it is definitely very, very useful. Good for retriggers, good for point value. It is technically an action you can take while you refresh, you know what I mean? Because refresh, then this card shifts because you drew cards. Very nice. Definitely very, very nice card. Another thing about flexibility, really. Like this is a flexibility-centered card. Spirit 4, swap position into your protocols. This is definitely nice. I find it's a little annoying sometimes, but I think you really accept that for the point value, and 2, the functionality it brings. And then if you really want to keep a certain protocol in a certain spot, just swap your 2 others around. Like it's not the worst thing ever. Spirit 5, you discard 1 card. It's a 5. Then finally, water. Water is kind of fun. Water 0, flip 1 other, flip this card. I've come to a realization that it actually is a bit better. It still operates kind of weird to me, and that it's sort of just a flip card. Like it's like Spirit 2, but somehow it's way better, and I don't understand that, but it just is. And water desperately needs flip cards, so if you don't have anything else, at least this kind of does the job. It's still nothing crazy, but I'll go like about here with it. Water 1. This is probably it might be Water's best card. It definitely goes low A tier. It's like Life 0, but if I put Life 0 in A tier. Okay, it's like Life 0, but if it was better. Because in my opinion, not having to have another card in each other line is very useful. In addition, it sticks around. So theoretically, if we think about it this way, Life puts out 6 total points of value. Water 1 is only going to put out 5 points of value. However, you can re-trigger this because it stays on the board. And you want to know what card is a beautiful re-trigger card? That's right, Water 4. Which is in the same line as Water 1, which is amazing. So synergy-wise, it's good. And then play-wise, it's also very good. So I definitely like this a lot. Let's go A tier with it. Water 2, draw 2, rearrange your protocols. This offers you a bit of flexibility that I like. I feel like I'm honestly using it more often for the draw 2, which means I can't put it up super high, but I've definitely used it before and found it nice. So it's always something that you don't need until you really need, Water 3, return all cards with a value of 2 in 1 line. This is a very good card. You can use it against your opponent if they have a lot of, say they use Gravity 0. This is one of the cards you could use to solve that problem, and then they have to discard a bunch because their hand size is over 5. Additionally, if you play a really good card, and then say flip it, or it just happens to be a value of 2, you can get that card back. It's also great for re-triggers, right? Because if you play a face-down card on top of a really good card, and then take that face-down back, you've re-triggered the good card. Honestly, kind of love this. Another element of flexibility. You gotta manage the game a little bit for this to be peak usefulness, but it definitely can get the job done. Water 4, return one of your cards. This is like Water 3, except if it wasn't as annoying. However, occasionally it's kind of hard to use. My only complaint with it is I found I'm often just returning it to then re-trigger something. And the rare times I do return something else, I gotta make that decision then of, do I want to, am I gonna be okay with not being able to re-trigger using Water 4 at some other point? But I mean, generally it's still good. I think this is definitely one of Water's best cards. And honestly, I think just overall, I've come to a better conclusion on a lot of Water's cards in general. I used to think they were kind of bad. Now I think, frankly, they're kind of good. And Water 4 is another pretty good example of that. And then finally, Water 5. It is a 5 card. And that's That's kind of all there is to it. It is sort of useful if you play it face down, so I guess I will bump it up a little. Same with life, I guess. And frankly, that's about it. That's the whole thing. If you want the compile card database, it's going to be link in the description. Say thank you to all the people who created this. If I can find who they were, I will put that in the description as well. I will organize these real quick, maybe in silence, maybe talking, and then post this. And I'm very sorry about the ads. Ad blocker is not getting the job done here. That's about it.